Hey, Float Magic fans, Shani coming to you here. Wanted to talk today a little bit about creativity in the float tank. It's a pretty phenomenal process when people tap into the availability of brain space while floating. And I just wanted to talk about why that happens and why that is and how I've actually done that in this process. So in the float tank, we're naturally removing all stimulation. We're removing time, we're removing space, we're removing light, sound, we're removing any type of logical awareness where things are linear. We get more in a spatial concept. And because of this, our right brain really gets engaged in a more dominant way. Throughout time, as young children, our brains are very much developing in right brain. We don't have concepts of time. We're not in a logical process. We're very much about experimenting and play and imagination and those fantasy processes that are such a beautiful part of childhood, right? Those all serve a purpose in the way that our brain develops. And that's very much a right brain dominant feature. As we go into our school process and as we start learning more linear, more time logs, more logical processes, our left brain becomes a lot more dominant. But the real power of our brain is when the two sides can truly work together. And we are in such a turned on community. We're constantly tapped into, we're constantly on. We know what our schedule is because our phone reminds us of it all the time. And so we really don't get that opportunity to leave that logical, linear process to the side like we have in times of the past. A lot of the great thinkers of our time always referred back to their appreciation of solitude, of quiet. Tesla, Da Vinci, Benjamin Franklin, they all talk about taking those times of just complete solitude. Maybe it's a walk in the wilderness. Maybe it's just a sitting. Maybe it's a quiet sit-down meditation session by a stream. There's some great power in allowing that right side of our brain the opportunity to become more dominant and to become more active. So a lot of practices that are out there, meditation, yoga, even sound baths, things of those nature really tap us into that right brain process. But I would argue that there is no better circumstance to tap into that right brain dominance than the float tank. And we've seen that across a lot of the clients that have come in for us, and I've personally experienced that. I often like to tell individuals that this whole center was designed in a float tank. And that is not an exaggeration. I absolutely took the time to think through the process, to think through how my employees would workflow, to think through what the client experience would be while I was floating. If something arose that I felt like I needed to get some answers to and I couldn't just quite push past it, I would try to keep those questions in mind. And when I visited up to 5B Float or over in Stillwater and Boise while I was floating, while preparing this center here, I really took it upon myself to answer those questions and allow space for my brain to work through that process while I was floating. A very similar process is like when we're going to sleep at night and our brains just rapidly go through everything of our day. We're allowing that space of relaxation and right brain dominance in that problem solving theta wave state. And so when you can do that with meaning and intention in your day and know that that's the purpose that you're floating for, it can be supremely beneficial in getting past writer's block, artist block, problem solving. A lot of athletes, I know I've spoke to this before, they use it for visualization. They'll just take out all the stimulus and just visualize, because that imagination piece really comes alive on the right brain dominant process. And so what's some ways that you, as an individual, might utilize our space here for your own creative process? I mean, not only do we have our float tanks for that hour, but if you take the preparation to come in and really focus your intention on why you're here and the time that you're going to be doing it, it can reap great rewards. We had an individual come in just the other day that came in for a free massage chair session because we had a mailer that went out that a lot of people have been taking advantage of. And he had time enough that he went ahead and floated as well. And he, at the end of it, he was like, I allowed, it was the massage chair, but he got so relaxed enough that going into that float was just a natural extension of how he wanted to spend his time. And so coming and rushing in to do a float, I mean, if that's all you have time for, it's still a very valuable amount of time and a very valuable thing to do. But when you can take the opportunity to make some time for a massage chair session ahead of time, really think through what you want to focus on in that float. While you're sitting in that chair, you're already producing that zen and that quiet space. And when you can think through that and then step into the float tank, your mind is prepped and ready to really solve some great problems. And then while you're in the float tank, just let things arise. Don't direct what your right brain's going to do. That's a left brain process. If you're trying to tell the right brain what to do, you're not in flow. You're not in right brain. You need to just let go and just relax and let that brain really work through. See what your brain comes up with. When you can allow the space not to direct it, not to speak things into existence, that all has its place. But to allow for the opportunity to just let your brain come up with ideas. There's benefits in boredom. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. Like, there's a reason we were bored as kids, because we'd go out and we'd get creative and we'd put our minds to work. If we're constantly allowing for something to take up our time, our brains don't get an opportunity to stretch to the furthest facets of itself. And so allowing for just your brain to just be, and for you to just be, can be a really powerful practice. And afterwards, if you still find that you want to create that space, there's the sauna, soon to be the salt cave. All of which are these quiet individual spaces that you have all to yourself. You don't have to engage with anyone. You don't have to engage with music. You can choose to engage with that. Some people find that those frequencies and those vibrations really help them move through more of a creative problem-solving process. I personally feel like absolute quiet gives me the greatest benefit. Even when I'm in the car, sometimes I'll just leave my music off so I can think when I'm on long drives and not direct that think. It's something we don't get enough of an opportunity to do in our modern day and age. So we really encourage you to go through that process. So back to how I created this space in the tank is I would come up with these concepts and I'd think it through the tank. Call it my think tank. If it didn't still excite me, once I'd kind of go through the process, I kind of would put it to the side, and maybe it'd come back and excite me again, or maybe it was a viable thought. The contractors that worked with me through this whole process were fantastic. I mean, the communication factor was awesome, but so much of the space had to be an inspirational and intentional move because none of us had ever built anything like it. None of us had, and very few people have. When you think about the float tanks industry and how many centers there are across the United States, I mean, we're talking 300 to 500. That's not a lot. And And so there's a lot of information out there that is still being built upon and still being expanded upon. And so it's kind of an exciting field to be a part of because there's so much room for growth. It's like we're raising an infant industry. And so taking the opportunity to really think through all of those points of process and intention was so valuable to have a tank process. Talked a little bit about athletes, why they come back and visualize. I just had a podcast not too many episodes ago about an individual who is breaking through barriers with his recovery process. And visualization is a part of that recovery and a part of that expansion of work process. Peak Performance talks about rest, or stress plus rest is where your success is. And that visualization piece really helps people push through that stress portion of what they're dealing with. Maybe it's a relationship that you're dealing with that is causing some extreme amount of stress. Maybe it's a work relationship. Maybe it's a personal relationship. Being able to visualize those conversations or even run through a mock conversation in your head and just let your brain see where it takes you in that conversation. Like I said, try not to direct it. Those can be supremely beneficial for your personal aspects of your life. A lot of times I'll think through issues I need to talk through with my employees. It's like this morning before even starting our team meeting, I always throw in a Novathor or some type of a session ahead of time so that I have that space to just really think through the words I'm saying, the message and how it's going to land. What intention, what it is that I'm trying to communicate to them. And I'll go through that process in those quiet times. Because when you have chatter and busy and input continuously, your brain's taking up too much stimulation from everything that's coming in. So it really doesn't have an opportunity to just focus on that one issue that you're trying to work through. And so you utilize what we have here as a great opportunity to tap into that right brain process, to that creative, free flowing, just being in the non-spatial aspect of things and see where it goes. So that right brain awakening, it also allows us to be more aware of our body. When we tap into our bodies and what those feelings are deep within us, those functions, the breath, the heartbeat, the sensations, it truly makes us more aware outside of the tank as well. When we take the left and right brain and let them work together, we're just expanding all the faculties of our brain to the point where some people refer to it as enlightenment. When you open that door to be more aware of your body, connecting your brain back to your body, you see how your body responds to the sunlight. You see how your body responds to the breeze that's going by. What it feels like to get into that cold water, that warm sun. It opens up so much more enjoyment factor, because as human beings, we're so incredibly attuned to what's around us, so much so that we adapt to the point where we no longer are aware of what's around us. It's almost like a survival mechanism. But when we can pull back into that awareness of ourselves and really tap into what's happening in the atmosphere that affects us, it causes a whole new sense of awakening. And I know I'm using these words, enlightenment and awakening, and right, these are all big buzzwords right now, but it truly describes what happens when you allow yourself the space to just be. You become more aware of your human existence, more aware of everything that your body is adept to do for you to make your time on this earth meaningful and purposeful. That's what I feel the true power of our float tanks really provide for people is an opportunity to connect back to that source of yourself, that source of this human heart and this human blood and this human mind and the breath that goes through you, so that you can turn around and meet the purpose of your deepest desires. This center to me seemed like a far off dream in so many different realities. I didn't know how I was going to bring it to into existence. I didn't know where the money was going to come from. I didn't really have all of my ducks in a row per se, but there was something deep within me that knew I had it within me to do it. And I think so many of us have that within us, where we have this drive to do something. We might not have the logical, linear picture wrote out, the left brain side of it, right? But our right brain side is so confident in what it is that it's delivering, that it will find a way. And so many times we forget that the left brain and the right brain can make things happen individually, but it's even more powerful when they work together. And so allowing yourself to just believe that your right brain has just as much importance as that left logical side of things really is going to open doors to your creative process, to your enjoyment in life, to your purpose-driven action and intentions. And I highly encourage you to allow us that opportunity to help you facilitate into that process. So just remember, tune into us every other Tuesday. We are loving bringing this information to you. We've had some guests on our podcast. That's been super fun for us. We'll keep trying to give you content that is viable, usable, and improves every aspect of your life. That's our goal here at Float Magic. So please remember, it's okay to stay salty. We've got plenty of ways to do it.